House Armed Services Committee Chairman, Democrat Adam Smith of Washington State, and committee member, Republican Congressman Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. I want to ask you both the same question. I'm going to put up a map of Ukraine over the past day or so, what we've seen of attacks, a lot of bombardment, really some of these towns taking major hits. Same question to both of you. Mr. Chairman, start with you. How do you think, looking at this all comes to an end?
That's really hard to say because we clearly have a stalemate now. Putin has not been able to achieve his objectives, not even come close. His military has underperformed, and most amazingly, the Ukrainian people, their courage and their willingness to stand up to him was something he didn't expect. He is stalled in his objectives, but as has been widely reported, he's not one to say, okay, I made a mistake. So where does he go from there? For now, what we have to do is support the Ukrainian people, get them the arms they need, get them the support they need to stop Putin. And then what he has to do is recalculate. And we need to put the pressure on him for that recalculation. But I wouldn't be so bold as to predict how it ends. I'm just really encouraged that the Ukrainian people have stood up to the invasion the way they have.
Congressman Gallagher, same question to you. I mean, is the hope now that there's some negotiated settlement?
Well, I think the best chance we have to force a negotiated settlement that is favorable to the Ukrainian people, that preserves some semblance of a free Ukraine, is to continue to put hard power in Putin's path. I agree with what the chairman said about providing lethal assistance. I think there's more we can do on that front, particularly figuring out how we get some air defense systems from Slovakia to the Ukrainians. But I also want to make sure that we don't allow Putin to set up a sanctions evasions hub in Iran. And certainly if China decides to intervene on behalf of Putin by providing military assistance, we should be prepared to punish China for doing that. Above all, we can't allow the fear of escalation, though we should be cognizant of it, to dominate our efforts. It should be Putin who fears our escalation, and that's the best chance we have for some form of negotiated settlement, in my mind.
Congressman Gallagher, 8 Republicans voted against revoking normalized trade relations for Russia today. It's not a big number, but there is a part of your party that expresses some fear of backlash or kind of that these sanctions could hurt Americans, boomerang, if you will.
Well, I think there's two things going on here. One, we're in a fortunate position thanks to innovation in our domestic energy industry where we're even able to talk about decoupling from Russia and banning the purchase of Russian oil. We need to do everything possible to unleash the power of domestic energy production. The second thing is, I think there's a belief out there that persists that somehow we can claw the Russians away from China. We can work with Russia over the long term in order to balance against China. If that were possible, that would be interesting. But it's not possible. These two countries have been waging a new Cold War against us for the better part of a decade. Their cooperation is increasing, and I see no prospect for us to have a cooperative relationship with Russia in order to balance against the long-term threat of China. And so I think we need to abandon that fantasy.
Mr. Chairman, speaking of China, the president has this call with Chinese President Xi Jinping tomorrow. Do you have a sense of where China is in this with Russia, with Ukraine? Where are they standing?
I don't think China has a clear sense right now of where they are. This has put them in a really awkward position, and I agree with Mike. We need to put pressure on them. China is the one country best positioned to bail out Putin now that he has dug himself this hole in our sanctions and the unity of the West against him. We need to make sure we put maximum pressure on China to not allow them to do that. But look, they didn't expect Putin to do this. I mean, and now that he has, they're caught between the fact that they wanted to build that partnership with Russia. By the way, for exactly the reasons that Mike said, Russia and China have one big thing in common. They want to bring us down. And that's why China wants to partner with Russia. But at the same time, China is running around the world saying, we won't interfere in sovereignty. And now they are giving aid and comfort to the country that has interfered in sovereignty more than any other in a catastrophic way. So I think we need to keep the pressure on them to shame them for any relationship that they have with Russia, given Putin's brutal war in Ukraine.
You know, we love to have interviews with Democrats and Republicans together talking about issues. This seems to be an issue that there is bipartisan support to support Ukraine. Outside of this issue, Mr. Chairman, what do you all agree on?
Well, the biggest thing we agree on, the Armed Services Committee is a very bipartisan committee. We had a great brief today from the Undersecretary for Policy, Colin Cowell, and the members. I mean, the knowledge base on the committee in a bipartisan way is incredible. And every year we pass the defense bill, a major piece of policy in a bipartisan, bicameral way. On the Armed Services Committee, we agree on more than we disagree on. And I think the biggest thing is you can hear, Congressman Gallagher and I talking about, we got a real threat from Russia and China. We need to unite and figure out how to meet that threat across a wide range of areas. So we do work very, very well in a bipartisan way on the Armed Services Committee.
Last word, Congressman Gallagher.
Well, the wedge issues are domestic energy production as well as Iran policy. But on the issue of support, lethal assistance to Ukraine, I think right now we're united. And I very much appreciate what the chairman said about getting tough on China. I think we have a huge opportunity to expand bipartisanship on that point by, as the chairman said, shaming them by declassifying intel if it shows that they're providing military assistance to Russia, as well as cutting off the export of things like semiconductor subcomponents that China needs for their semiconductor industry. I think we have an opportunity to forge a bipartisan consensus that gets very tough on Russia and China simultaneously.
Well, Congressman, we appreciate the time. We'll follow all of this. Thanks.
Thank you, Brett.